All right, let's do this. Welcome to What's Working, everyone. I'm Cam Marston. I'm happy you're here for the show. For every show, forever. For 7 years, I've opened the show telling everybody what the show is about, and I was listening to some other radio shows the other day, and they just assume everybody knows. So I'm going to assume that you know, too. What's Working has been around for 7 years, and we're just going to jump right into it. There has been a change in the way you buy homes. And that is the focus of our show today. When we get back from break, I'm going to have Angelo DePaola with me. Angelo's both a realtor and a friend. He runs a realtor company down in Orange Beach, Alabama. And his customers are largely wealthy retirees who are buying homes, who are doing so in order to keep the family, the kids around. I mean, I'm oversimplifying things here. But he's been on the show once before, and he says his typical customer is often somebody that is buying a home so that the kids will come visit and the grandchildren will come visit. So they buy these beautiful beach homes down in Orange Beach and make it a haven for the family. And now, since the National Association of Realtors standard practice came under fire, the rules for buying homes have changed. And it used to be that there was kind of predetermined commission that you would pay, and the government, and I'm going to let Angelo get into the weeds on this thing, the government essentially said, no, you can't do that. That's not right. It's not fair. It's unfair or whatever. Again, we'll learn more about this. But Angelo's going to give us the update. And this is significant because as we're doing this show right now, there is talk about decreasing the interest rates. And that would, theoretically, I think the way it works, change the mortgages and make mortgages more affordable. Right now, mortgages are largely unaffordable, especially for young people trying to get into their first home. And the point is, the rules of buying a home have changed. The opportunities to buy homes may increase as a result of the government decision-making very soon. And if you're in that position, you want to know what the new rules are, and Angelo's going to walk us through how that works. In fact, I talked to a friend of mine not long ago who said he was confronted with this new rule by the realtor, and the realtor asked him what he felt were some unreasonable requests based on the new rules. And again, we'll get into this with Angelo when he comes back. Now, something else interesting going on out there. By the way, a trivia point I saw in the news not long ago is that Elon Musk is predicted to become the world's first trillionaire, trillionaire, by the year like 2026 or 2028 or something like that. Extraordinary, assuming nothing implodes with his rocket company or with Tesla. But that's just extraordinary. And one of the things that I saw most recently that really is a reflection of our time, this was when an article that I read, is that violence, particularly political environments, violence, tends to occur when the distance between the haves and the have-nots is extraordinarily great. And I say that as Musk is predicted to become the world's first trillionaire. Is there violence within our nation on the horizon? I don't know. The article that I read suggested that it is. All right. One more random thing before we go to break and get Angelo on the other microphone here. I always like good interview questions to see what they're asking, what the interviewer is asking, and what they're looking for in an answer. And I'm participating right now in the FBI's Citizens Academy here in my hometown of Mobile, Alabama. And we got a 7-week process of understanding how the FBI works. One of the questions they ask candidates is, give me an example when you had to completely change direction on something in order to be successful. And I thought, what a fantastic question. Somebody has to be humble and admit that their original idea or effort failed, and they had to completely punt and retrench in order, I'm mixing metaphors here, punt and retrench in order to be successful. So question for you. How would you answer that question? And if you were interviewing somebody, what would you look for from them in an answer? You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Be right back after this break with Angelo DePaola.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thanks again for being on the other side of this show. Angelo DePaola is sitting on the other side of me. He's with the Coastal Connection team, brokered by eXp Realty in Orange Beach, Alabama. He's a friend of mine. He's been on the show before, but it's this National Association of Realtors settlement that has caught my attention that Angelo is on the front end of. It's impacting his business. He's going to teach us about it. First and foremost, Angelo, before we get too much further, thank you so much for your time and welcome back to What's Working.
Cam, thank you. I'm so honored and humbled every time I get to really just spend time with you. You asked some of the most thought-provoking questions of anybody I've ever met. And I know it's awkward having somebody compliment you like that, but like I do. And like, I'm just honored to be here today.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I have a question problem. In fact, I'm going through this, and we'll get into the reason you're here, but I'm going through this FBI Citizens Academy right now, and I can feel the looks that I'm getting amongst the 19 other participants going, shut up. We'll never get out of here unless you stop asking questions. Let's talk about this National Association of Realtors settlement. I remember reading about it, hearing about it. In layman's terms, Angelo, what does this mean to me and my listeners?
All right. So I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there because a lot of people are getting their information from something they see on social media. They're getting it from a news outlet, whatnot. Well, at the end of the day, those are essentially clickbait kind of items, right? Like they want you to click on that so they can, get a click essentially.
Yeah.
And then they try to explain it, right? And they don't do a really good job of what's going on in the industry because they're not really practitioners in it. So they're hypothesizing on what this may look like in the future. And I think it's just still really a guess, right? This thing went into effect August 17th. It was supposed to be in effect June 17th, I believe. And so as we sit here today, we're almost 30 days in to this new world. And I think to talk about it, you got to have some perspective. Perspective in my world, I think, is everything. So at one point, all the commission went to the buy side of the industry.
Yeah. So let's back up even one further step. I enter into an agreement to either buy or sell a home, and there's a commission that's paid to the realtor in order to make that, not to facilitate the transaction, but that's how they get paid. And the National Association of Realtors settlement is targeting that commission, correct?
Correct.
Now pick it up where you were talking about.
All right. So traditionally, what would happen when you bought a house is that you would go reach out to a buyer's agent. Maybe you reach out directly to the listing agent. But what most people do is reach out to the buyer's agent. But at one point, there really was no buyer representation. People went directly to the listing agent. And because for most part, at least here in Alabama and most states, the barrier to entry into real estate is relatively low. It's a 60-hour course, like $1,200. Most brokerages, if you can fog a mirror, they will take you in because the way they derive revenue is through agent fees and whatnot, not also through the commissions, but for the brokerage and the commissions have been being contracted pretty significantly. So it's desk fees, transaction fees, and whatnot is really kind of the revenue model for brokerage. So what was happening is buyers were going directly to the listing agent. Well, like who's representing who in that situation became a problem, because if I'm representing you as the property seller and Jim Smith comes over and wants to buy it, my agreement's with you. So like this guy buying it wasn't getting any proper representation.
Right.
So,
Jim Smith could easily have been taken advantage of at that point.
It was happening. So what happened was National Association of Realtors came up with a compensation sharing model where if it was a 6% commission, part of it would go to the listing side and part of it would go to the buyer agent side for representing a buyer. That ensured that somebody buying real estate had proper representation. It would almost be like a attorney being the defense attorney and the prosecutor is the way it kind of happened before, right? So we'd been doing that since the 90s. And then there was a lawsuit. A group of people felt like that realtors, through this compensation agreement between brokerage houses, were inflating the cost of real estate by adding the extra 2.5% or 3% or whatever it is to the buy side. And they didn't feel like there was any like competition or way to negotiate this for a potential client, whether it was buy or sell side, which is also untrue. There's always been for sale by owners.
Yeah.
There's flat fee listing companies for somebody that doesn't want or doesn't require a high level of service, right? So it's one of those deals you kind of got what you paid for. The problem is there was no transparency in the real estate industry. Buyer agents were like, let me come work with you. I work for free. Mm-hmm. It doesn't cost you anything, because they knew they were going to get compensated from the listing agent side. That broker, once the deal closed, the brokerage was going to send a commission to the buy side brokerage, right? So they felt like that was a barrier of entry, artificially raising the pricing of houses. And in most of the world, it worked like it works now under the current settlement.
After the settlement,
buyers have representation. They pay a fee to their buyer's agent. Sellers have representation. They pay a fee to the listing agent. Now, that seems like kind of straightforward kind of stuff, right?
Right.
But the barrier to entry is not the extra 2 to 4%, somewhere in there, of what it costs when you finance the agent fee in. For most Americans, the barrier to entry is the upfront cost. So
okay, keep going.
So if you have a loan, you have costs associated with the loan. You have appraisals, home inspections, and now you have your buyer agency fee. So now your costs, and for maybe the upper income class, this isn't going to be a very big deal. But for people that are buying the average American price point home, that like, I remember that point in my life when I was like, man, I can't believe I'm going to have to save up $20,000 and I can only save $300 a month.
Right.
Like, those people are the ones going to get squeezed on this deal.
Right. Right.
And before, like if you called me up and say, hey, Angelo, I want to look at this house. Great. We can schedule an appointment and we can go show it. Now, when you want to say, hey, Angelo, I want to come look at this house. Great, Cam. Hey, look, I need you to come in the office. I got to explain to you the NAR settlement, and I got to go over how I'm going to get paid, because I can't do it for free. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work in my business model. Like it, and so it will get ironed out, I think, over the next 6 months, like what the norm's going to be. But it's going to be very important for the people representing buyers to like have a value proposition for that person. Like if you go see a financial advisor, if you go see a doctor, they tend to have lots of questions.
Yeah.
If you go see a realtor about buying a house, hey, how many bedrooms and bathrooms do you need? What's a price point that works for you? Is there a particular school district? It's pretty vanilla, maybe 5 questions.
Right.
So we got to look at like, hey, what's going to be the value proposition there?
So you're going to have to tell that buyer who's looking for a new home, you're going to have to agree, we're going to have to negotiate how much I get paid if this transaction goes through.
I can't even show you a house
Until that conversation.
until we have that buyer agency agreement signed.
We'll be back after this break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, sitting across from Angelo DePaola in the studio today, talking about this new National Association of Realtors settlement and what it means to you and me. Be right back.
This is Bill Eastet. I perfected my baking recipe behind my live music stage at my little restaurant in Fairhope, Alabama. We have custom-made smokers and small batch bacon made just for you. So if you're looking for the best bacon in America that has been cured, smoked, and even serenaded by songwriters, you definitely need to try Billy's Small Batch Bacon. www.billysbacon.com.
Angelo DePaola runs the Coastal Connection team, brokered by eXp Realty in Orange Beach, Alabama. He and I are talking about the National Association of Realtors settlement that got in place about a month ago and is going to change a good bit of the way some of the home buying happens. When we were going into break, Angelo, we just began to talk about what the buyer of a new home is going to have to agree to if they see something that they like on the market and they pick up the phone and call you or any one of the realtors out there. They're likely going to experience a new conversation up front that didn't happen in the past, which is you saying to me, the buyer, hey, before I can show you this home, you and I have to agree and likely sign some sort of document on what I get paid if you want to buy this home. Previously, that conversation perhaps never happened. It maybe came out in the wash at some point. But it would seem to me that the consumer, the buyer of this new home, now is going to become much more aware of what they're getting in this process. Is that right?
Oh, completely. I think that's the real win. I actually don't think it's going to bring down buyer representation cost or overall cost of buying a house very significantly. For the biggest reason is most consumers, like the average person, doesn't have any experience negotiating on this level, right? Like, what do you buy a house every 3 to 10 years?
I hope not. That's just such an arduous process.
How long have you been in your house?
We've been in the house 15 years, and the process of moving in was so laborsome that I thought, I'm not coming out of this house unless I'm in a box.
So for most people, their house is their number one wealth asset.
Sure.
That's how Americans build wealth for the most part, because most of us are not very good at saving. It's a kind of a forced savings. I was meeting with a guy the other day that's a part of his retirement package is a reverse mortgage on the equity on the house.
I've heard of that.
So the consumer, are they going to be able to negotiate commissions with a professional, right? And then is the professional going to be able, the real estate professional going to be able to show the consumer here's what the service looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my office, we've been looking at this, working on this for about a year now. So our buyer intake is about a 15-page document.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Is it a contract or just here's the service we provide, a sales tool?
We want to lay out what you can expect from us.
Uh-huh.
And we want to have a very clear vision on what you're trying to accomplish. Like, are you going to be in this house for 1 year? Are you going to be in it for 5 years? Are you going to be in it for 15 or 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Then we need to know, is there a particular school district? What kind of flooring? Do you want a fireplace? I have had a client that's like, after we showed him 15 houses, he goes, none of these work. I don't know, like my wife wants a fireplace and we're not buying a house without a fireplace, right? So these questions have to be fetched out. So we've gone through, because we've got over 10 years experience in this, we represent 50 to 80 people every year in a real estate transaction. So we got large sample size of like, what are the questions that we should be asking? So just like when you would go see your financial advisor, just like when you would go see a specialist, a doctor, or an attorney, I want to fetch out everything that we need to fetch out, right? So you're going to get some clarity. I also have to talk to you about what that fee looks like to have me represent you. And the best way I can explain it is like, I think it's almost like operating like an attorney now. Like there is a fee for service. And what I can say for me is like that fee is a X number amount. And there's multiple ways to do this, right? And you'll see all kinds of models probably come out from this. And I thought about this. I was like, well, what if we did operate like an attorney? And it was a hourly cost for me to represent you, right? So I went through and I did like hey, this is what we grossed. This is how, like I track in my office, I track when I get in and when I leave, so I know how many hours I work every week. And so what it came out to is just a smidgen over about $700 an hour is what it would cost to hire me.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't think people understand that. The other thing that we did was we did a time study on what a real estate purchase, how much, whether sales or purchase, how much time is involved in that. So since we're doing lots of transactions, we would say, hey, we got Jim Smith, we got Billy Joe, and how many hours did we spend on, and I had everybody on my staff, how much time did you spend on this person? How much time did you spend on this person? How much did we close this person? And what it came out to is about 70 hours worth of work per real estate transaction.
No kidding.
Yep. So
per buy or sell, 70 hours.
70 hours on average.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that close. That does not include the time I spend with people that nothing ever happens with.
Right. They don't find a house.
They don't find a house. We go on an appointment. We look around, and since, hey, Angelo, after looking around, we think we can't find anything that's an upgrade that we can afford. So we're going to stay where we're at, right? So
let me ask you, I'm going to interrupt. I want to follow this, but I know you're in Orange Beach, Alabama. There's a lot of retirement homes, beachfront properties, things of that nature. Does that in any way change what we're talking about, that the buyer is looking for a second home, a vacation home, something like that?
I don't think so, because we operate in Mobile, Pensacola, all the way over to Panama City. So we've got residential buyers that are primary residents. We got people that are investors that are building real estate portfolios.
Yeah.
We got people that are buying their second home. So it's a large swath.
Yeah.
So and what we find is through all of that, it takes about 70 hours.
Okay.
So, and the problem is, if I'm charging you $700 an hour, if I think about it, if I have a staff member send you an email, guess what I'm having to do? I'm having to track that and charge it to you. So you could see where I could run up the cost pretty significantly. And I thought, well, what are the other ways that people could be represented in this new world? Well, I could represent you like a contractor. I could say, hey, Cam, for this flat fee right here, this dollar amount, I will do this job. Well, the problem is with real estate is that for some of it, it will just take 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
For some of it, it will take 50 hours. For some of it, it will take 100 hours. Like, if I underbid that and you need 100 hours worth of work, guess who's going to have you ever hired a contractor that you couldn't get back on the job because he underbid it?
Yeah, I know all too much about that. Yeah.
So that happens, right?
Yeah.
So what I tell my clients is this: why don't we do it the way we've always done it? You pay me when the job gets done. I require X number of percentage to represent you in this transaction. What I will do is, because what it comes down to is not the total sales price of the house, it is the net dollar amount that comes into the seller's pocket after all fees are included, right? So we submit an offer, and now the offers are submitted with a buyer agent compensation attached, which before, since those were already predetermined from the listing agent, we never did that. So can I work on that? Should we get to a dollar amount that we get squeezed a little? Yeah, that can happen. And look, in a normal market like we're in right now, no problem. The problem comes in, what happens when the market's ripping like it was during COVID,
right,
and you're in a multiple offer situation, and now all of a sudden you got to pay your buyer agent 3%, and you're in a competitive situation with 30 other offers or 10 other offers. Like, you're going to have to either go up on the price or come down on the fee. And now how does that work out? We don't know right now.
So there's some still great unknowns out in front of you. And as we're talking, there's finally talk about the interest rates being lowered, which should theoretically impact mortgage rates, which could move you towards this great unknown here before too long. You're hoping, I assume.
I think we will. I think we're in a political season that's hotly contested, and we're coming to the crescendo or an inflection point on short-term interest rates will affect bond yields and mortgage rates.
We'll pick this up after break. Angelo DePaola runs the Coastal Connection team, brokered by eXp Realty in Orange Beach, Alabama. We're talking about the National Association of Realtors settlement and what it means for you and me. Be right back.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. The National Association of Realtors settlement that came in action just over a month ago now, is the top of conversation with Angelo DePaola and me. He runs the Coastal Connection team, brokered by eXp Realty in Orange Beach, Alabama. And they're still kind of trying to find their way through on how this is going to look. Angelo, as you've been working with your buyers, have they tried to negotiate your commission that you've suggested to them? And what does this mean for the services that you offer going forward?
You know, I think we're, like I said, at this point, we're almost 30 days into it. We've not had any pushback. I've actually, from what I used to get paid to what I get paid today to represent somebody, has actually gone up. And I feel like for somebody in the real estate industry, like, this really locks in. Like, before, I never required a buyer agency agreement. If you didn't like how I operated, or I didn't do what I said I was going to do, you could just say, sayonara, I'm out of here. Right. I'm going to go find somebody else. Right now, like, you can do this buyer agency agreement for just one property. Like, hey, I called the listing agent. I just want to see this one property. I'll deal directly with them. Or I can do it for a specific amount of time, whether that's 30 days, 6 months, 1 year. Right. So the unique thing about my business is last year it was 88% referral and repeat business. This year's actually tracking more in the 90s.
Wow.
So I've had long-standing relationships either with the people that I'm representing, or they were referred to me by somebody else that I have had a long-standing relationship with. Like I said earlier, we have come out with our list of services. We've got very detailed, like, here's our value proposition. We don't have enough time to go into that today.
Right.
But the main thing I bring to somebody is a high level of negotiation skills. And we talked about that earlier. You know, the average person may negotiate 1 to 2 things, decent sized deals per year. But for the most part, they're not even doing that.
Right.
I'm negotiating 10 to 15 large transactions every month. I know the agent on the other side of the transaction. I know how they're going to operate usually. And I know how to develop an argument to advocate for our clients. So you got to make sure what you're paying for is what you get.
So this means going forward, I'm hypothesizing here, going forward, the buyer of any real estate transaction around the country with this settlement from the National Association of Realtors, this new world, the agent that is, and I'm going to use this perhaps as a derogatory term, but the hobbyist agent is suddenly behind the 8 ball to compare to those. If I'm now having to negotiate what I'm paying you, I'm looking more closely at what I'm getting.
Exactly. The transparency is going to be much better. The hobbyist agent, the person that's got a dual employed agent, is what I've had an agent call themselves. That's somebody that has a full-time job that also sells real estate. These people may do anywhere from 2 to 5 transactions a year because real estate commissions can be pretty significant amounts of money that, like, it's totally worth them to put in extra $10,000 to $50,000, $70,000 in their pocket,
Sure,
doing it part-time. Like, I think those people are going to have a very hard time explaining their value. I think people that hang around real estate offices and just jibber jabber around the water cooler that also do somewhere around that amount of business, I have a feeling that they are going to have a hard time explaining their value. I think where this industry goes, and this is the upshot for the consumer, is that people like me, true real estate professionals that understand not just real estate, but financial markets on a pretty good level, are going to be able to advocate much better for you moving forward, whether that's on the buy side or that's on the sell side. Not only do I have market knowledge that is pretty unique and very in-depth, but because I am a world-class negotiator, I can advocate much better than you can probably for yourself.
Yeah.
And much better than somebody that is doing this part-time or just getting started.
So I'm going to seek out an agent. I'm going to look for their qualifications. And now it becomes less personality driven and more profession driven, let's say. And not that it hasn't been in the past, but suddenly I'm looking for somebody with more chops. Now, are you prepared, Angelo, to negotiate, use your negotiation savvy with the buyer, the person who calls you up and says, hey, I'm interested in this house. Can you help me? And you say, well, you're going to have to sign this document. And in this document, it says that I'm going to get paid this amount. And I say, hang on now. Your negotiation savvy has worked very well on the benefit of your buyers in buying a new home, a new property. Are you using that same savvy now to negotiate with your clients?
I do.
No question.
No question. First of all, you got to lay out your value, and then you have to take a really hard line on where your worth is, right?
And you've not had any buyers thus far push back.
Cam, I charge 3% to represent buyers. I charge 3.5% to represent sellers. That's everybody across the board. There's multiple ways to defend that argument, but I've not had anybody push back on that. We've probably done, in the past 30 or so days, 8 of these buyer agency agreements, all at 3%.
Are the buyers aware that they have the power to negotiate now?
They are in an even more in-depth kind of conversation than what we're having here. I break down like what's going on with the NAR settlement. I break down the reasons I think that it has happened and the positives and negatives of the settlement, and then what our value proposition is. So when you can go in depth and really explain it to somebody, then it's pretty easy to defend your value. Look, do I think there will be people out there doing this for 1.5% or 1%? Yes. Here's the problem. Those people can't even defend their own money. They're darn sure not going to be able to defend your money.
Oh,
so like if they lead off with that, like I know, like, do you want that? That's fine. I know I'm not for everybody. And if you want that, go with that person because they'll go do that job for that amount of money. That's not who I am. That's not what I offer. So, the other way to defend it is this, like, I'm the same thing for everybody I deal with. Like it becomes an integrity issue for me. If I did this deal for you at this amount and then you sent me your buddy or your cousin or whoever, and then I cut them a favor, like I have no integrity there. Right?
What if you get like an agent, a second tier agent, and the buyer says, listen, I don't want to pay you 3%. And you say, well, I've got my 1.5%er over here. He or she just started in the business. They're 28 years old, 26 years old. They don't know what I know, but if you want to pay cheap, go hire them. They're a part of my team.
So that's just not how we're set up. So
not part of your culture.
Not part of our culture. So our team is a pretty unique setup because what you described is how probably 90+% of real estate teams are set up. Hey, I've got more business than I can handle. I'm going to bring in Susie, who just got a real estate license, and I'm going to give her my overflow business, which is the low price points, the stuff that's probably not going to happen. Susie's going to, in 6 months, rack up a bunch of credit card debt. She'll be out of this. So my team is a team of professionals. We're set up like a basketball team or a football team. I have two things that I'm good at. I'm good at procuring relationships, which gives me access to properties that aren't always on the market. I'm a world-class negotiator. So the only things I do are those two things. I have a full-time listing coordinator and client care concierge person. They're doing all the stuff with listings. They're doing the research. They are world-class at researching what properties are worth and giving me ranges. I have a full-time marketing person with summa cum laude from the University of Alabama in journalism. She does nothing but marketing. Full-time transaction coordinator with 30 years experience, nothing but transaction coordination. And my wife is a very good systems and process person. She operates like a COO and a CFO.
How can people find you?
The easiest way is you can Google Angelo DePaola, The Coastal Connection. If you put The Coastal Connection real estate or The Coastal Connection Orange Beach, you'll end up on my website. We provide a service like nobody else does in the real estate industry. So if you want a high level of service coupled with market knowledge and great negotiation skills, you should reach out to me.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be back after this break with segment 5, telling you what I heard and what you can expect on upcoming shows.
I'm Joey Mason. For 4 years, my goal has been to produce the best farm-to-table products I'd ever eaten. I've done just that at our on-site USDA facility in Grand Bay, Alabama, allowing us to ship directly to your door. This is true farm-to-table. Visit us at masonhillsfarm.com to see all that we have to offer.
Angelo gave us a little bit about what we can expect going forward if you're in the home market. The prices that you're going to pay, being the buyer to your agent, are now negotiable. But you got to be a little bit concerned about what you may get for somebody that's willing to go low on the negotiation, willing to accept a lower fee. Angelo and I spoke after the microphones were off, and I believe him. This new process, if that's not the right word, but the new system with the National Association of Realtors settlement is going to make the best realtors more valuable. And much like you, let's say you can find an attorney that'll do work for cheap, Or you can find an attorney that's going to do an hourly rate that's perhaps much greater. You're going to get a lot more comprehensive wisdom from that attorney who has the background, the time, the experience in their profession to be able to charge what they do for an hour. So again, there are going to be a lot of different prices out there the next time you're shopping for a home for what they're going to pay for the realtor. And it will, I think, in time, allow the cream to rise to the top. And you can pay whatever you want, but you're going to get what you pay for, essentially. Coming up next week, I want you to remember this name, and this is a wonderful story. I learned this from Business Alabama magazine, flipping through, and I reached out to them and said, can I meet May May? There's a story in your magazine this month about May May. Can I meet May May and perhaps interview her on the show? I've spoken to her, and I got to tell you, this is a woman that lives in Chilton County, Alabama, that has created an extraordinary business where people will fly in from all over the country and places in the world to Chilton County, Alabama, to be with May May and to work with her on the crafts that they find so important. May May has a talent, a desire to make cards, and she began to film this and put it on YouTube, and the business has exploded, and you're going to be, just like I was, somewhat amazed at the business that's been created by May May in Chilton County, Alabama, and the lengths which people go to be with her, to fly across the country and across the world to be with her, the people that show up for her webinars, the way she charges for them, and this extraordinary business she's created out of a small town in a rural county in Alabama. You're not going to want to miss May May next week. That'll wrap us up for this week's, folks. You can find us on all the social media stuff. Go out there. LinkedIn, Facebook is where I'm mostly active, though trying to create a LinkedIn presence. If you want to come to my website and sign up, you can get a free chapter of my book called What Works. Go on, scroll to the bottom of the front page, the home page, enter your name there, and you'll get a free chapter of the first called What's Working. We got I think it's the first or second chapter that we send you as soon as you sign up, and love for you to take a look. I'm very proud of that book. It's doing well. In fact, I'll be at a conference in 2 days selling those things after my presentation. Anyway, hope you have a good week, everybody. You're listening to Cam Marston. This is What Working. We'll have another show next week. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes, they're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.